Hello and welcome to Social Media for Humans, the podcast that empowers you to do social differently. Your host, Alexis Bushnell, and her guests discuss their experience of social media as business owners, users, and ultimately humans, with insights and advice to help you find an effective and ethical strategy that works for you. Grab yourself a drink and join the conversation.
Hello. I am here with lovely Vanessa. So do introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do.
Hello, I am Vanessa Persephone Wells. I'm an oracle card reader and intuitive coach. I specifically work through the model of shadow work to help people connect with and build on their self-worth. Yeah, in a nutshell.
Very good. I think this is something that comes up. I don't want to say it comes up with social media because I think a lot of people don't realize it's coming up. But I do think it is something that is sort of bubbling under the surface when people have issues with social media. So I guess, first of all, how do you sort of see that the stuff that you're working with impacted by social media?
I feel like social media has become a stressor, right? For a while, it was just sort of this like fun toy, and then that toy developed into a tool, right? And it went from something that was easy breezy lemon squeezy to having meaning and like having significance and having weight. And the more it shifted into being a tool, it depersonalized the experience and it became about like messaging, and that is neutral. That doesn't have to be good or bad, just depending on the ways in which that's getting used and to what ends, right? The means and the ends of it. And so now we have this comparativism epidemic that happens, and we have this really this urge of control, right? We have to control our feed, we have to control our content, we have to control how we represent ourselves with filters and this, that, and we have to have all the right hashtags, and we have to caption it right, and we have to get the timing right of when we post it to make sure people see it and all this stuff, and it becomes stressful. And so when we're already operating at this high threshold of anxiety, just because the state of the world right now, many of us, I wouldn't say all of us, but what many of us came to as a tool to sort of ameliorate that anxiety and that heaviness has now become like a pivotal focal point of that. And I think many of us are still trying to like kind of hold on to the way it was, right? The fun and the carefreeness of it. And we don't realize that we're actually, experience this friction of how the tool is being demanded to be used and how we're being curated to use it through the way everyone else is using it. I know for me, I fell out of love with Facebook a while ago because of the energy there and the conversations that were being had, right? It was kind of like going to, an obligatory holiday dinner with family members that you don't see eye to eye with, and you're just going to be like, I'm just going to have to tolerate all this crap. I'm just going to sit here and take it and just, drink my wine and wait for dessert to come so I can leave, right? Like that was Facebook. And it's like, all right, I don't actually have to engage with this. Like I don't have to put myself in that space. I get to choose to leave that space. And now Instagram is starting to become that for me personally, but I know for a lot of people too, there's a lot of people dropping out of the space because there's just so much like shit to deal with, the fake accounts and this and that and whatever. And people are just like tired of it. And I don't want to do it anymore. And TikTok also has its own brand of like trauma instigation that I'm going to touch on. So when I looked at this for myself, I really felt it tied into my codependency conditioning. and the trauma that I have around that, and the adaptive behaviors that I've had around that I've worked so diligently to comprehend and also like work through and learn how to, you know, manage, if not transform, right? And so once I kind of spotted that, I took like the zoom out approach, and I was like, well, it can't just be me. I'm not the only person in the world. And I started to listen to how clients that I work with were experiencing things, and just people that I know that have the same kind of wiring.
Mm-hmm.
And it started to become apparent that, okay, there's actually a relationship dynamic between the user and the platform, regardless of how we're engaging with other users. Like, we're actually in a relationship with Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And it's a bit of a one-sided relationship because we actually don't have that much influence over the behavior of the other in this relationship. And how that really echoes a lot of that codependency conditioning, where we feel responsible for trying to change or adjust or remedy a dynamic where ultimately we don't have power over the other. But yet we feel like, well, what if I do this? Well, what if I do that? Well, what if I change this? Well, then, will it work better if I fix that? Well, what if I change? What do I need to do differently? And keep putting all that onus back on the self, instead of taking a bit of a neutral approach and saying, like, is this working? Flat out, as it is this working? For me, it's not. Okay. Is it something I'm doing that I'm not happy with that's contributing to this? Right. Like, so it's that self-inventory of like, am I doing something that I'm not happy with? Or am I doing something that's unhealthy for this dynamic that I'm ready to look at and be like, oh, I can do this differently? Or am I trying to change something that's outside my sphere of influence? Right? Am I trying to have power where I am ultimately powerless? So that really opened up a host of questions. And that one of those questions is, when you're a content consumer, right, you can just walk away. When you're a content creator, when you're using social media to leverage your service or product, to promote your business or your art, or, you know, however you're using it as a marketing tool, that relationship becomes a lot harder to walk away from, because your survival is dependent on being there in that space. And that echoes a lot of abuse dynamics and a lot of trauma dynamics for people. And I don't think people realize that that's happening to them. Much in the same way that when you're in any sort of, you know, dynamic like that, it's really hard to see it from the inside.
I think it's really telling as well, the way you say that we are in relationships with the platforms themselves. And I think that is really telling when people say, I hate Instagram, I hate Facebook. And for me, the platform is like, I'm not a fan of Facebook. It's not my favorite platform, but I love Facebook groups. And I think it's really, for me, when people say things like, I hate insert network here, it's very like everything about it. And there's no kind of understanding of, maybe it is the people you're following, maybe it's how you're using the platform, maybe it is because what we don't realize, I think, is that, especially when we first start on a platform, there is a tendency to follow the big people on that platform in our industry, the people who are largely not using it especially ethically, who are buying into that FOMO and pushing a certain lifestyle and doing those things. And so our experience of a platform becomes that. And I notice this so much when I see like other people's Instagram accounts, especially, and I watch them as they're scrolling their feed, and their Instagram feed is just a whole different world to mine. Like, it is an entirely different experience. And so I find it really interesting that you say, like, we don't have the power. And I think to a degree we don't. You know, if Instagram wants to bring in reels, if they want to kill hashtags, if they want to change this or delete that or whatever, we don't have the power. But I think we have more power than a lot of people realize to change things. And while you might not be able to, like, you can't guarantee that your post is going to do well, even if you check all the boxes, but you can adjust your experience on the platform to align with who you are and what you want from it.
Sure. Like there's that discernment piece of what can I actually influence and affect and what can't I, right? Choosing who you follow. And that's something that, so from the like content consumer point of view, you know, I'm going to use my example of I am very passionate about animal rescue. So I'm like, I'm going to follow all the animal rescue things. Because I want to support them, because that matters to me, because that's something that I want to include in my experience, right? And then every time I'm scrolling, it's like sad doggy thing, sad doggy thing, sad doggy thing. And because I have a very low threshold to tolerate suffering, I'm just like, while I want to be supportive, I'm also being highly activated. And so there becomes that choice of like, okay, this is something I have control over, right? I can either hide the accounts. I don't have to unfollow them, but I can hide the accounts that are a little more graphic or a little bit more triggering in that way. I can unfollow ones if I want to. And I can train the algorithm, right, to give me more of what I like. So in that respect, absolutely. What we don't have power over is how that algorithm is coded and how that works, how much preference is given to certain accounts or ad space or things like that. And where Instagram has a little bit, probably because it's been around longer, has more of that curation when it comes to just like your feed. Something like TikTok, I find far more jarring in that way, because that For You page, all of a sudden, you know, you see like the TikToks that are like, somehow I ended up on, you know, this side of TikTok. And it's like, every once in a while, you're just like, how did I get that on here? And it's such exposure culture and like documentation culture that a lot of times you get something and you're like, I was not prepared for that. I feel really derailed and dysregulated now. And that it could just be a factor of catch up because they haven't been around as long. So that like accuracy of curation may or may not be there. I don't really know. But for sure, we can curate our experience and say, hey, I want to see more of this. I'm engaging with this. Where that catches, right, is when we're not clear about how we are training the algorithm for ourselves. And so for people who do have this embedded conditioning or wiring to take responsibility for things, to fix, right? There's going to be a gravitation towards social issues that are really dire or things that are, yes, very, very important. And so that somatic and unconscious psyche pull to like, I need to know more about this. I need to know what's going on. I need to know what's going on. I need to get involved. I need to cross post. I need to comment. I need to like, I need to do all these things to support the cause, right? At what point is it supporting the cause? And at what point is it inundating your own feed with stuff that's stressing you out, where it's like one person alone can't solve all the issue, but that sort of reaffirms that feeling of helplessness when it's like, oh, all this stuff is going wrong, all this stuff is going wrong, and I'm just seeing more of everything that's bad. And there's that disconnect from solution. There's that disconnect from where things are progressing, or where there is some resolution or just some lightness. And that's not to be bypassing about it, but it's about balance, right? And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she did a TikTok, or maybe it was Instagram, I don't know. And she was like kind of pointing that out in the way she said, if it feels like nothing is working, if it feels like everything is awful, that's because they want you to feel that way. Like, they want you to feel like things aren't working. They want you to feel helpless. They don't want you to see where we are making change and where we are making progress when it comes to like unionizing workers and things like that. So her message was about encouragement against cynicism, and like, don't just buy what's right in front of you, seek out also the sources that are talking about the good things that are happening and finding that balance. So it's, yes, we can be discerning if we know what internal program we're working with and need to balance and calibrate, right?
I think that is the key really, is that we do have control over what we see to a degree, but we have to be conscious of that, and we have to be consistently aware when we're using social media that the algorithms are designed to keep you on the platform, and stuff that keeps you on the platform is stuff that makes you keep doom scrolling. It's stuff that makes you feel, I have to share another post, I have to find more information, I have to leave this comment to disagree with this person. That's the content that keeps people engaged. And as much as like we think we want to see more positive news, to see good stuff, to see happy stories, largely people don't engage with that content. They don't share that stuff because there isn't an urgency with it. It's not something bad is happening, I need to change it, I need to help. It's just, oh, like, that's nice. And that's where it ends. And I think there is this, especially in like the spiritual community, there is this sort of desire for, oh, we want social media to look like this, but a complete disconnect as to our own role in that. And I do think being aware is really the key, because if you can notice early enough on that, okay, I notice my mind is speeding up, I am trying to find more information, I feel more frantic, I feel like, oh, I need to get more information, then we need to step away. Like, that's when you go, I'm out. Whether that's for a couple of hours, whether that's for several weeks or months. And I think it is being aware, like you say, of what sets us off and what triggers us and what is sort of at our core going to do that, and allowing ourselves to protect ourselves from that as well. Because there is also this issue of, if I don't follow those accounts, then I don't care about it. If I don't like those posts, then I don't care about those things. And that's just not at all how it works. In fact, generally quite the opposite.
Yeah. And right. So it's that thing of like, am I supporting the cause? It comes back to your point really of like, how are we consciously using this tool? And a lot of times we go to social media for the unconsciousness of it. It's a tool of disassociation. It's like, I'm going to zone out. But we have to remember that it is a source of information. And so are you just going to walk into any old, classroom if it's not something that your values align with, that you're interested in, that is working towards making you a better person and making the world a better person, whatever your, view of that is, like, or you're just going to walk in, sit down, and absorb information regardless of what it means and its consequences and contributions. So social media is kind of the same deal. And we have a responsibility to ourselves to consciously engage with the things that not only work for us, but work for the greater, progress and well-being, collective well-being, right? Is there one way to do that? Nope. Right? It's a highly personalized experience, and it becomes, so that's where it's like that self-connection of like, like you were saying, like, how am I feeling as I'm doing this? Right? Am I feeling better about myself? Am I feeling better about things? Not that we have to feel good all the time. That's obviously not the truth. But am I actually putting myself in a place of harm? Like, am I harming myself? Am I activating my anxiety? Am I making myself more depressed? We don't need help with that right now. Like, we can get there all on our own just by existing in the current framework of life. And like recognizing that that's hard. Like, living is a little hard right now, and or a lot of hard. So being like, yes, following accounts and increasing engagement for those accounts is supportive in a way, but does it equate having an impact? Does it equate contribution to the cause that you care about? Are there other ways that you can show up that aren't so inundating and flooding to the somatic system, to the nervous system, to the psyche, right? That will actually give you that sense of contribution that you're after without the hyper stimulation of curated doom scrolling messaging, right?
And I think as people who are sort of very empathic, I also think it can help to consider when we're resharing those things, when we're in that place and we're resharing everything, posting stuff to stories, posting stuff to our own Facebook feeds and groups and Twitter and everywhere. Actually, what we're doing is just spreading our own stuff and triggering other people. We everything we are then consuming, we are then pushing out to everybody that is following us, and we are helping other people to get into that same state and get into that same, oh my god, I need more information, I need to share this information, I need to like this post and comment on this post and have a go at this person. And that's probably not what we're intending. We're doing it thinking this is going to make a difference, this is the important information that we need to put out there. But actually, there might be other ways that you can curate that information for your audience in a way that isn't going to activate them like that. So I do think as well, by sort of slowing ourselves down and being like just more conscious in what we are sharing and how we're engaging on social media, we also help to protect our own communities by not pushing that out there for them as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of shock content out there. And also, like, working within the framework of brevity, context goes out the window, right? So, so much of personal growth or spiritual direction or, social advocacy has been reduced to these bite-sized little tidbits that that do work to like nail that chemistry, right? So whether it's a dopamine hit or whatever other chemicals, adrenaline, right? Just like from that anxiety point of view of like, oh, this is urgent, this matters. Which you pointed out is a lot more addictive in our current climate, especially than, the upworthy posts where it's like dopamine hit, oxytocin hit, where you're like, oh, that's so nice, that's wonderful, So that adrenaline kick gets a lot more traction, you know? And I forgot where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. If it comes back, I can cut it in.
There it goes. But yeah, so from that place of like the content consumer, that's where we have that thing. When it becomes to being the content creator, then same set of issues and variables, different needs and demands, right? So that's where that feeling of failing a lot of times kicks in. And that feeling of, what can I do? What do I need to change in order to make this work? And because we don't have control over who engages, how they engage, right? But we do try to control the variables of, when do I post? Do I post long form or short form? Which hashtags do I do? Do I do video? Do I do, text, quote, inspa quote kind of stuff? Like experimenting with all this different formatting. And the thing is that things change, right? Instagram or whatever the platform is are going to always change and mix up their stuff, because they're keeping up with their own trends and they're keeping up with their own demands and such, and they're evolving with just culture. So when it feels like, oh no, I don't know what I need to do now, we're back in that sort of seat of, what can I fix? What do I do? Where do I have power? Where do I don't? What can I adjust? And it can feel like a scramble. And the difference is there's less of that, I'm just not going to do this anymore, because that then impacts visibility, which impacts the purchase power of people or your relevancy. And once you fall out of the feed, it's that much harder to get back into the feed. And it becomes these questions, and it's not that they're insurmountable, but it can feel like that sense of flailing and failing, because you're just trying to like make it work. And like, it just might be that it's not working for you right now or anymore. And it's like, okay, well, what do we do?
Yeah. And that is something that when I'm working with people, I do find that they are often in that state of either, I'm just rubbish at social media, I can't do it, and that tends to come from a place of, they just don't know how it works. They don't know the sort of core principles, not the specific ins and outs of every single platform and every single algorithm, but just the core of what social media platforms are aiming for. And I find that a lot of the time, once people have that grounding, they can run everything past that and go, okay, this post didn't do very well. Oh, it was probably because, and it removes some of that, oh, it's just that I don't know how to use hashtags. It's just that I am really bad at writing captions. It's just that I take bad photos. And it removes some of that self-blame.
It's when people don't realize that they are wired to take that responsibility on, instead of having that sort of objective thing of like, oh, there's two forces here. There's what I'm putting out, right? And then there's what happens after that. And I don't have control over that, but I can learn from it. I can take information from it, right? And it doesn't all have to be about, it's my fault, I'm bad at this, oh, like I'm doing everything wrong, right? When we don't recognize that we have that rhetoric going on in our heads, or that we're like preconditioned to receive an experience like that, then we lose that capacity and that self-agency to heal it, right? To remedy it, to be like, oh, okay, this one post did bad, or this series of posts did bad, right? What metrics can I take away? And be like, all right, can I try something totally different? Am I not willing to try something totally different? Like, what are my boundaries around content creation? Just as like, it was like, what are my boundaries around content consumption, right? It becomes that that self-exploration of what am I willing to take on and what am I willing to put out and what am I not? Yeah. And it comes back to that consciousness that you're talking about, that we have to remember to be intentional about how we're engaging with ourselves first and foremost, and then with others, because it is a social platform and what we put out does get consumed and received.
And I would wager that a lot of people are just not, they don't even notice that they are having that response when they are on social media. They don't notice that they are being activated, let alone what they are being activated by. What can people do if they are worried? If they feel like, I hate social media, or I hate this platform, or I'm really rubbish at social media, what are some steps they can take that might give them an insight into what's actually going on?
I think a place to start, I think it's a couple things. I think a place to start is with the self, and like just that self inventory of like, what am I actually feeling? Right? Just like take that time and that space to connect. What am I enjoying about this? What am I not enjoying about this? What is working for me? And okay, what's not working for me or my business, however you're using it, right? Like being willing, even if you're not yet able to, but being willing to take that reflective inventory of what's actually happening here, right? Because when we can be in that place of neutrality and observation, which I'm not saying is easy to be in, but if in those moments when we can get there, when we're a little more regulated and we can get there and be like, okay, so what's actually happening here? We can see a little bit more contrast between everything is horrible and I suck. And okay, here are the moments that didn't meet my own expectations. What were those expectations based on? How closely did I execute my expectations through my content? Right? Like that's where we can look at ourselves and be like, okay, what do I have influence over? And then also looking at, okay, but there's nothing I can do about who's receiving it, right? There comes that point where we have to relinquish a little bit of control. And it's not all on you. And that can alleviate pressure, right? You can take a little bit of pressure off yourself to be like, I can't control what happens after this. So, but it is like any relationship. If you're putting out and putting out and putting out in the way that feels authentic and aligned to you, and you're not getting back, you're not getting back, you're not getting back, then either the community that follows you isn't in alignment with your values or your service, or the platform isn't. And that's where we then begin the process of like deciding and grieving change, right? Exploring, same way you would do with a job that you no longer like, where you're like, I need to leave this job. I'm going to start researching other options, other availability. But it comes down to also, again, those boundaries of what do I need? What are my needs? What do I need from whatever medium or platform that I'm creating content for and putting it out there? Because you might find that you're trying to get, blog results or ebook results from TikTok. And it's like, well, those are completely different formats. And you actually might be better suited, might be more soothing and nourishing for you to write long format content. Maybe you need to be on Medium. Yes, it's smaller. Yes, it's totally different and whatever. But if it's going to keep you in a more regulated state of content creation and you're going to feel like you're doing better work for yourself, maybe that's more worth it than likes or whatever feedback you're getting from the thing that's causing you stress. So it's it comes back to that self-assessment of what are my boundaries and what are my needs? How am I crafting expectations based off of those things? And can the outlet that I'm engaging with actually reciprocate the energy and effort that I'm putting in?
Yeah. And one question that I get asked so much is like, which social network do I need to be on? Which platform do I need to be on? And my answer is just always, well, which do you enjoy?
Yeah.
And people are stunned that is my response.
Yeah.
Because they're expecting like, well, you need to be on Instagram because it has the most people active, the most active users, or you need to be on TikTok because it's growing the fastest, or whatever. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like none of that matters if you hate being on the platform, if you hate creating the style of content that does well for you on that platform.
Yeah.
And so it is so much better for you to say, right, well, I already spend a lot of time in specific Facebook groups and I really enjoy spending time there. And my community is there. So I'm just going to be on Facebook and do Facebook groups. Like that is an effective social media marketing strategy. If your people are there and you enjoy spending time there, just do that. Don't set yourself up to be completely overwhelmed all the time and to constantly feel like I hate this, I'm rubbish at this, I don't want to be doing this is just awful and I hate everything. Because you don't need to do that to get results. And also, if you feel like that, you're not going to see the results anyway.
Exactly. Like what kind of motivation and inspiration do you have to create content if you're going into it being like, this is going to suck, like this isn't going to pay off, right? And it's a reminder that our emotional needs matter in our work. And so feeling good in what we're doing matters. It deserves a priority. It doesn't have to be the top priority all the time. Like sometimes in our work, we have to do things that we don't want to do or that we don't like. But those should be few and far between and like not traumatizing, right? Not activating and not putting ourselves in this place of like self-deprecation. So yeah, starting with, it's like exercise, you know, what type of exercise should I do? The one that you will do. Doesn't matter if it's yoga, doesn't matter if it's going to the gym, doesn't matter if it's mixed martial arts and kickboxing, like whatever one you're actually going to do consistently because it feels good and you enjoy it, that's where you start. And you can always optimize something that exists when it has a good foundation, right? But if you're working from a broken foundation, it's so hard to build on. So you're totally right. Pinpointing what you enjoy is like key, because you're also going to connect with people that are like-minded and that share values, and those are going to want to be your people. So it like sounds so simple and yet it's not easy so many times.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things, isn't it? Like people, when you say it, people go, oh yeah, that makes sense. But people don't think about it because we are, again, like so caught up in this constant feed of information where it's like, these are the stats for this social network. These are the top performing posts. This is what you need to be doing on this network. This is the upcoming thing. You have to be XYZ. And we just, that is, if that's all we're seeing, it's incredibly difficult to take a step back and go, do I like this?
Yeah.
It's creating tons of short form video content something that I actually am going to enjoy and want to do? Or am I going to be sat there every single time I need to make one of these like short form videos thinking, I hate everything, I have no ideas, this is just the worst?
And we also, like, as we're looking to other people, right? We can't see that this is what they love to do, right? They're like, that they love doing short form video. They love doing reels and TikToks. Like it lights them up. They have fun with it. Like we don't see that beyond the finished product, right? So when we're looking to other people for ideas and inspiration and influence of like how to be successful, we're looking at, well, they do things that are this long and they do stuff that we take reference from like the physical material stuff. And we don't actually step back to attribute like, I wonder how they feel when they're doing this. I wonder, you know, what motivates them to do it. It's like, oh, they're good at it. They enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what allows all the other pieces to kind of fall into place, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other side of that is when, especially like when Reels came out and quote, everybody's doing Reels now.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that no, they're not. That they're not. But you're seeing more Reels in your feed because Instagram is pushing Reels.
Exactly.
They are prioritizing Reels in your feed. So you are seeing more stuff from the people who are doing Reels. There are still tons of people out there who aren't, and they're still doing well on the platform. And I think this is something we can really easily forget is, again, the things that we don't control are influencing what we see. They are changed, like that is what is deciding like what is actually appearing in our feeds. Yeah. And that is what is informing how we think we need to be on the platform. And this idea that, oh, everybody is doing this, everybody is doing that, is just not true. Like, there are people who aren't on social media and are still running successful businesses.
Yeah.
There are people who create really long form content and do really, really well with it, because there are people out there who want that. And sure, maybe you're not going to reach the majority of people in the world who are on social media, but you don't have to be for everybody.
No.
It's totally okay to recognize, right, these are my people, and I'm going to create content for them. And I don't care if it's 0.001% of social media users, because they're my people, and that's fine.
Yeah, it comes back to that style of relating, right? If you have, you know, a platform and an algorithm that's like, we want people to do things more like this, so we're going to inundate the feed and create this illusion that this is what's happening, right? If there's a relating style within you that's like, oh, I need to do what they want me to do. They want me to be more like this. So I have to now change myself, right? That's where this codependency wiring comes in. I have to change myself to be more like this in order to belong, in order to be relevant, in order to be liked and popular. And that's not bad. I'm not saying that's bad or worth judgment or shame. It's something to recognize, because if that doesn't feel good, right? If that's contributing to, again, your anxiety, your depression, your self-image being inhibited or compromised, if you feel like I'm not enough and I'm failing and I'm not good because I can't do what is being dictated to me, there's a cause for pause right there. Like, oh, okay, is this true? Do I have to do this? Do I have to change the way that I like doing things in order to fit? And it also comes back to, is it more important to relate to the everyone, right? To be liked and accepted in this big old pool of things? Or is it more valuable to be impactful to this meaningful group of people? And that's a judgment call for everybody. It depends on what your objective is and what your reach is, right? But it's worth understanding and evaluating, so that, again, you can create realistic expectations for yourself, understand your needs, and create a relationship and a content strategy that actually nourishes and supports, as opposed to pressure, stress, failing, not working.
Yeah. And it is so true, because another thing is very much this idea that, like, just having to be doing all the things, just, I have to be XYZ, and I have to post 7 days a week, and I have to post to stories, and I have to do reels, and I have to do our podcast, and I have to write a blog, and I have to do a newsletter, and I have to do all these things, and I'm just like, why? Whoa. just can we just have a think about like why which of those things is actually important to you? Because the other thing is, not all of those things are important for all businesses, you know. And again, it comes back to who your audience is and who you are. And I think a lot of basically this conversation is just, you need to check in with you and start with you.
Yeah. And that is I think something that that has been trained out of a lot of us, that it doesn't start with us, that we come second or third or fourth or whatever, especially if you have codependency conditioning. That's your default, is what they need comes first. And then I respond, reflect, and adjust to that. And that's where it's important to recognize that if that is part of your experience and conditioning, that you're starting on a back foot when it comes to relating. There's a little bit of catch up or a little bit of extra intentionality and consciousness that has to be brought to the dynamic and to your content consumption and creation, because otherwise you're going to put yourself back in a situation that doesn't feel good. Even if in your relationships you're working towards, healthier dynamics and relating, you might be over here just feeding that old dragon kind of thing and being like, oh, but I still have it going on. And that means if it's activated over here, it's going to eventually ripple out into other things. So how can I just come back to center and come back to me and what I want and what's good for me and what I need and the new tools that I have for relating, and apply that to this template that kind of predisposes me towards old ways.
Yeah, definitely. If people are not sure if they are activated by things, if they have those codependent sort of traits, what are some things they can look out for that they might be able to notice, so that they can decide, right, okay, I need to do some work on this, I need to reach out to somebody, I need to change how I'm using social media, whatever?
I think one of the big tells is that feeling of helplessness, right? It's that feeling of like, no matter what I do, I can't get it right. No matter what I do, it doesn't work. And that will feel true, and objectively will also not be entirely true. But the fact that it feels true is a real clear sign of like, oh, okay, wait, I'm not in the healthiest relating dynamic to this right now. So pause. Let me remove myself from that environment and see how I feel. Let me put this down for an hour, for a day, for a week, whatever it is, until I can feel like recentered, right? We get outside of that threshold of tolerance and it's like, oh, and when we can get back to this place of like, okay, I feel like I can meet this in a regulated and responsible way. I can pick it up, I can look at it, I cannot feel an excessive emotional charge around it, right? But it's when we're feeling supercharged, particularly around helplessness, insecurity, and then self-deprecation, or that self-blame, right? Like, what am I doing wrong? What am I missing? What don't I understand? Right? When it becomes that, like, we really turn that responsibility all on us, like we feel like we're carrying most of that weight, that's a good clue of like, all right, I'm dipping into an unhealthy relating dynamic here. And I can't change that piece right now. So I need to just step away and give myself some space to recalibrate. And that's where we go do self-nourishing things. We do self-soothing things. We get ourselves back into a state of self-connection and somatic regulation. So I'd say that would be the first clue. The second clue is also compulsiveness, right? Right. We can't put it down. And we have to fidget, and I'm going to delete the post and delete all the hashtags, and I'll repost it at a different time and see if it works better. And then I'll do that again, right? Or we keep trying to repeat the same thing and expecting it to yield a different result, right? So it becomes that template of, if I just keep showing up and if I just love them harder, eventually they'll notice me. Eventually they'll see my value. And it's like, maybe not, baby. I don't know.
Yeah. And if they don't, that's their problem.
Yeah, and there's nothing you do about it, right? You can't make somebody, or even a not somebody. You can't make a something like bend to your will like that. Yes, it's what you need, but maybe that's not what your community needs. Maybe that's not what your followers need. Maybe that's not what the platform needs right now. And your needs matter. That doesn't mean your needs are wrong. It means that those needs need to be met elsewhere or in a completely different way. And so it's not about eschewing your needs and being like, oh, I guess I need to do things this way now, even though that freaks me out, or it's a limitation for me. It's no, okay, my needs matter. This is my need. And how can I get that met? Can I get that met here in this way? If not, where else can I experiment? Where else can I try?
Yeah. That has been so useful. I am sure there are many people listening who are thinking, oh yeah, that is me. I definitely have this problem. If they are thinking that and they would like to work with you and sort that stuff out, where can they find you?
They can find me at Dark Hearts Healing Arts, either on Instagram or just .com. And I offer one-on-one. All my work is one-on-one right now. So it's intimate, it's private, it's online, so it's easy breezy. And it's a really, it's a sacred space that we work in to really connect with those deeper and more pained parts of ourselves that kind of take the wheel without necessarily our permission sometimes, and lead us into places we don't want to hang out in.
I will pop the links in the show notes so people can find you super easily. This has honestly been so interesting, and I am really, really helpful and supportive for people. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me and for having this conversation with me.
Stop.
If you want more regular reminders to find your own way to use social media, follow Alexis on your social platform of choice. All the links will be in the show notes. Until next time, be a human.